Hello and a very good morning. You're watching the Breakfast News on Rajya Sabha television. I'm your host Frank Pereira. Here are the latest headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Nagaland and Tripura on third day of his visit to the northeast will inaugurate power plant in Tripura. Prime Minister Narendra Modi tells police to be smart. Intelligence chief says Islamic State has no support in India. Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar to lead India's delegation at UN's climate conference in Peru today. 200 nations seek to finalize draft deal on limiting greenhouse gas emissions. And fresh clashes break out in Hong Kong after protesters try to block government headquarters. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be visiting Nagaland and Tripura on the third day of his maiden visit to the northeast. He will inaugurate the second unit of the 726 megawatt power project in Parantana in Tripura. State-owned ONGC has commissioned its biggest ever commercial power project at this place. In Nagaland, Modi will also inaugurate the state's biggest annual festival, Hornbill Festival. Late on Sunday, Modi addressed BJP workers in Imphal. He highlighted his government's efforts to step up development work across the nation.
दुनिया को देने के लिए बहुत कुछ है, दिखाने के लिए बहुत कुछ है, उसको प्रभावित करने के लिए बहुत कुछ है, प्रेरित करने के लिए बहुत कुछ है, लेकिन ये सारा हमारा क्षेत्र अनटैप रहा हुआ है.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the 49th All India Conference of DGPs and IGPs in Guwahati on the last day of the two-day conference. Giving a new acronym on the occasion, Modi spoke of the need for smart policing that is in tune with the needs of today's age.
The Prime Minister on Sunday making a pitch for what he called smart policing.
Smart police, as for strict and sensible, M for modern and mobility wali, A for alert and accountable, R for reliable and responsive, T for techno-savvy and trained.
To an audience that included Home Minister Rajnath Singh and police officers from across the country, Modi spoke of the need to strengthen the intelligence network.
जिस व्यवस्था के पास उत्तम प्रकार की गुप्तचर व्यवस्था होती है, उस व्यवस्था को कभी भी न शस्त्रधारी की जरूरत पड़ती है, न कभी शस्त्र की जरूरत पड़ती है, और शस्त्र के उपयोग की तो कभी आवश्यकता ही नहीं रहती है.
Intelligence Chief Saeed Asif Ibrahim told the conference that the Islamic State had not found significant traction in India. His comments come a day after Arif Majid, the man detained on suspicion of being an Islamic State militant, was produced in a Mumbai court.
It is quite reassuring to observe that despite the size and spread of the Indian Muslim population, the threats posed by these developments have not found significant traction so far. Unlike many Western countries, only a handful of youth have fallen prey to the allurements in India.
The Prime Minister said the negative image that people had of the police force needs to be changed. He spoke of the measures implemented while he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat.
क्या पुलिस थाने की अपनी वेबसाइट हो और हर हफ्ता एक सच्ची एंड 100% सच्ची होनी चाहिए पॉजिटिव स्टोरी हम ऑनलाइन रखें. आप फिर उसको कभी देखिए, आपको ध्यान आएगा कितनी लाखों सकारात्मक चीजें पुलिस के माध्यम से हो रही है जो समाज का विश्वास पैदा कर सकती है.
Former police officers say that Modi's ideas, if implemented, could give the country a completely different police force.
इस तरह से उन्होंने स्मार्ट की एक नई परिभाषा दी है और स्मार्ट में जिन गुणों का उन्होंने समावेश किया है उससे तो लगभग अगर वो सारी बातें हो जाएं तो निश्चित ही पुलिस की कायाकल्प हो जाएगी और पुलिस का एक नया स्वरूप हमें देखने को मिलेगा.
In a departure from the past, the government organized 49th edition of the DGP's conference outside New Delhi for the first time. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, joining me for a chat this morning on this very subject is Strategic Affairs expert RSN Singh. Very good morning, RSN. Thank you for joining me on the program. Well, this particular issue needed to be addressed sooner rather than later, wasn't it? I mean, smart policing is something that people have been talking about for a long time now. If these things are put into effect, it's certainly going to make the police force far more sensitized.
Yeah, I'll begin, by saying, Frank, that the security of a country is the degree of harmony between internal security and, external security. And in this age of proxy war, I think the smart policing that the Prime Minister spoken about assumes all the more importance. And let me tell you, this is the first time that a Prime Minister has emphasized on the imperative of recognizing the sacrifices of the police personnel.
Yes.
33,000 people have laid their lives since 1947, and we all owe our democracy to them. If policemen are dying in Maoist infested areas or in insurgency impacted areas, it is because I and you can function, I and you can exercise our adult franchise. So, although it comes to bit too late in the day, I think somebody had to embark on this discourse. So, I really appreciate, the Prime Minister's gesture. The second point he has spoken about is intelligence.
Yes.
Now, he's absolutely right. Look, today's wars, and I'm talking about sub-conventional wars or proxy wars, these are basically intelligence wars. But let me also tell you that it is certainly anti-national to pit the IB against the CBI as it happened in the past.
Yes.
It is certainly anti-national to subvert a police officer, I'm talking about Bhatt, for political purposes. Now we must not repeat these mistakes.
No, it's a very valid point that you're raising. I mean, integration and harmony between the agencies also is extremely important, isn't it? Because what has happened in the past is one agency knows about it, whereas the other, so the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. That's been the problem in the past.
Absolutely.
So is that going to get fixed now?
I think so. They should do it. They should do it. And any sane politician, any patriotic politician, he will be loath. He'll be loath to see his agency fighting with each other, or trying to do politics with each other, or trying to, carry a political agenda.
And as citizens of the nation also, do you believe that, the way we look at the police forces at the moment is not right? That too has to change. The common man's perception of the police also needs to change. And is that going to happen with time?
Frank, tell me, all of us, I know when we... because police is in direct contact with the people. We have had our bad experiences, but we also have some very, very good experiences. But tell me, are the good experiences highlighted? One odd, mistake here and there, it is blown out of proportions. But, if you keep criticizing an organization, keep criticizing a person, you build an atmosphere of negativity. And what you are doing is that you are robbing that, individual, that police personnel of the sense of pride. And once you have robbed his sense of pride, you will not get good policing.
All this is great. All this, this initiative is indeed a very fantastic initiative, as you put it. But then all this is going to be a failure if the right kind of technology is not in the right kind of hands as well. Even that's going to be a challenge. That's going to be something that needs to be addressed as well, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, that has to be taken care of, right, from the, training stages. And the kind of personnel we recruit, I think they need to be technologically savvy, because most of your intelligence, remember, even a beat constable, he has to also rely on electronic intelligence.
Yes.
So he has to be technology savvy. The Prime Minister is absolutely right.
What is the condition of the forces at the moment? Because you worked with them closely, you know exactly what happens. As far as police forces in the country are concerned, how are we lagging?
See, I would say that I have seen substantial improvement over the years. If I compare it in last 2-3 decades, there is a substantial improvement. there is a greater amount of responsibility and responsiveness. But remember, you know, these the police force always also deals with you know all the dirty things that happen in the society. So the Prime Minister is absolutely right when he says, yes, you have to be strict. At the same time, you have to be sensitive. But remember, they're human beings.
Yes.
And you have to treat them as such.
You know, I'm going to leave it at that note because that's such a lovely note we're going to end with. They're human beings at the end of the day and they need to be treated like human beings. And that's when we're going to see any kind of improvement. Thank you so much, RSN Singh, for joining us on the program this morning and sharing your views on this very subject. Moving on now, of course, preparations are in place for the second phase of assembly polls in Jharkhand and Jammu and Kashmir to take place tomorrow. Campaigning for this phase ended on Sunday. High-pitched campaign in both states followed an impressive voter turnout in the first phase. Security arrangements have been stepped up in the valley after terrorist attacks in Arnia and Srinagar after the first phase of polling. In all, 38 assembly seats will be at stake tomorrow. Out of them, 18 are in Jammu and Kashmir. Close to 400 candidates are in the fray in the two states with quite a handful of heavyweight candidates. In Jharkhand, former Chief Ministers Arjun Munda and Madhu Koda are the two biggest names in the fray tomorrow. 3 ministers of the Soren cabinet are also seeking re-election in this phase. Former Deputy Chief Minister Raghuvar Das is also in the fray from Jamshedpur East seat. In Jammu and Kashmir, as many as 4 ministers of the Omar Abdullah cabinet will be seeking re-election. While separatist leader Sajad Lone is also in the fray from Handwara seat. Well, as campaigning for the second phase of elections in Jammu and Kashmir and Jharkhand came to an end on Sunday, political parties are now focusing on the upcoming phases of polls. A day after addressing a rally in Kolkata, BJP President Amit Shah will hit the campaign trail in Jharkhand today. He will address a series of rallies in Bari, Hazaribagh, Ramgarh and Mandu. These seats will go to polls in the third phase on the 9th of December. He is also scheduled to hold a public meeting in Bokaro where polling will be held in the fourth phase on the 14th of December. It's time now for some other stories from across the nation in Nationwide. CBI questions Odisha DIG. The CBI has questioned a senior IPS officer Rajesh Kumar in connection with the chit fund scam in Odisha. Kumar is the first state police official to be quizzed by the investigating agency in connection with the multi-crore scam. He was until recently probing the chit fund scam as the crime branch DIG before the probe was taken over by the CBI. Tributes to the Bhopal gas tragedy victims and condolences were paid to the Bhopal gas tragedy victims ahead of its 30th anniversary. The survivors have demanded immediate scientific assessment of environmental pollution caused by the tragedy 3 decades ago. These also urged the centre to ensure that Dow Chemical does not make any investment in India until it accepts Union Carbide's liabilities in Bhopal. Well, it's time for a short break now. Much more lined up on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Let's take a look now at some other news events lined up for the day today in our special segment, The Day Ahead. Today is the 50th anniversary of the Border Security Force. The world's largest border guarding force was established on this day in 1965. Day-long celebrations have been organized at the Chawla camp in New Delhi, where Home Minister Rajnath Singh will be the chief guest. Celebrations to mark the golden jubilee of the force will also be held at different BSF camps in the country. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley is likely to meet RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan today to urge a cut in interest rates when the central bank holds a policy meeting on Tuesday. The RBI has kept policy rates unchanged for almost 10 months, citing high inflation despite persistent demand from industry and government for a cut to boost economic activity. Well, hearing in the long-running saga on IPL spot fixing and betting will continue in the Supreme Court today. In its last hearing on November 27th, the Apex Court had asked the BCCI why the Chennai Super Kings, in which its embattled chief holds stakes, shouldn't be disqualified. Former Union Minister Kapil Sibal will argue the case for Srinivasan. Bombay High Court will hear 3 petitions today which challenge the government formation in Maharashtra. The petitions challenge the manner in which the BJP led by Devendra Fadnavis won the trust vote in the State Assembly. The petitions also challenge the Speaker's action to call for a voice vote instead of resorting to the novel practice of division of votes. Well, ahead of the RBI's monetary policy announcement on the 2nd of December, both government and industry are stepping up the pressure for a rate cut, with both consumer and wholesale price indices adding to the pressure. The question is a rate cut imminent or is it too early to expect one? We explore this in our special report.
The RBI governor is under pressure. Falling rates of inflation are triggering demands to cut interest rates. The latest to join the chorus is the finance minister. Arun Jaitley feels a lower cost of capital will just be the right tonic for a recuperating economy. Based on the monthly wholesale price index, the annual rate of inflation stood at 1.8% in October, compared to 2.4% for the previous month and 7.2% in the corresponding month the previous year. The consumer price index too fell to a 3-year low of 5.52% in October. Industrialists argue the time is right for a rate cut to spur growth.
We are able to signal a slightly moderate interest regime. The revival of the investment cycle will be that much delayed. And I don't think India can afford that. If we look at the global picture that we need to revive investment, we need to build the supply chain.
But experts don't see a rate cut happening at the central bank's next monetary policy review, although they feel the central bank could soften its stance by the end of the current fiscal.
That be happy if it gets done, but be happier if it doesn't. For a simple reason that then you will see a more impactful thing coming through with a further more, I would say, a longer term treatment to this whole issue of inflation.
Falling oil and food prices have certainly brought down inflation rates. But oil prices are not in the government's hands, while food inflation is down on account of seasonal factors. For instance, the recent poor kharif crop output could push up food inflation again. The RBI has so far resisted calls for reduction in interest rates, citing stubborn inflationary pressures. But the question is, for how long? Analysts say little would be achieved if Reserve Bank of India reduces interest rates and inflation shoots up again. They say it would be prudent and beneficial for the economy if Reserve Bank of India holds on to the interest rates till the next quarter until the inflation numbers are well under control. Reporting from Delhi, Kriti Mishra for Rajya Sabha Television.
Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar will lead India's delegation to the UN Climate Summit in Peru. The summit begins today with around 200 nations looking to finalize a deal to limit greenhouse gas emissions.
After more than 2 decades of trying to forge a global pact to halt climate change, United Nations negotiators will meet in South America for a final push to limit greenhouse gas emissions. For the next 2 weeks, thousands of diplomats from around the globe will try to finalize a draft agreement at the UN Climate Summit in Peru. The meeting comes just weeks after a landmark announcement by US President Barack Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping, committing the world's 2 largest carbon polluters to cuts in their emissions. United Nations negotiators say they believe that advancement could end a long-standing impasse in the climate talks, spurring other countries to sign similar commitments. Ahead of the summit, Greenpeace activists have raised concerns over growing gas emissions.
Greenpeace is calling on the world leaders to transfer the energy system away from coal and oil towards a 100% renewable energy future by mid-century.
Utilizamos este santuario milenario para proyectar nuestro mensaje a los líderes del mundo. Necesitamos que se comprometan a llegar a cero emisiones de carbono para el año 2050 y para eso es necesario tornarnos a una matriz energética un 100% renovable.
Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar will lead India's 17-member delegation to the summit. Despite being the world's third largest emitter of greenhouse gas, India has not made emissions cuts a priority yet. All eyes will be on India to join the United States and China among the leading nations to pledge cut in emissions. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
More international news now. Fresh protests have erupted in Hong Kong after pro-democracy demonstrators defied prohibitory orders and tried to block the government headquarters today. Thousands of activists clashed with police in Hong Kong this morning. It is some of the worst violence since the protests began 2 months ago. There are reports of injuries and arrests while activists are still blocking one of the major roads. The protests were stepped up after police began demolishing one of the several camps occupied by the activists during 2 months of demonstrations. The latest clashes come as China said that it would not allow a UK parliamentary committee to enter Hong Kong as part of an inquiry into British relations with its former colony. The protesters want Hong Kong people to be allowed to choose their leaders without interference from Beijing.
The action held tonight is to generate more pressure to the government because you could see that, well, the government is adopting tactics to avoid responding people's opinion on the political reform. And if we have to force the government to respond to us in a positive way, then we have to generate more pressure. And, well, surrounding the, governmental building, it would be one to propel the government to face the public.
Well, let's now bring you up to date with the other news-making stories from around the world in our World Wrap. US Secretary of State John Kerry met Pakistani Army Chief Raheel Sharif in Washington late on Sunday. General Sharif was on a week-long visit to the US, during which he also held meetings with the US service chiefs and visited headquarters of the US Central Command for talks on issues related to US strategies in the Pak-Afghan region. Russia has sent another aid convoy to rebel-held eastern Ukraine. More than 100 trucks are reported to have crossed the Russian-Ukrainian border into the Ukrainian territory, heading for Luhansk and Donetsk. Some trucks with construction materials also reached the rebel-controlled Donetsk on Sunday afternoon. Ukraine has once again accused Russia of entering its territory without its permission, accusing Kiev of sending ammunition to the separatist rebels. Voters in Switzerland have decisively rejected a proposal to cut net immigration. The country's 26 cantons rejected the proposal, with about 74% of people voting no in Sunday's referendum. Supporters of the measure argued that it would have reduced pressure on the country's resources, while the opponents said that it would have been bad for the economy. Thousands of separatists staged a rally in Aden on Sunday, calling for independence for South Yemen. The former Marxist South Yemen was merged with the North in 1990. The call for independence was triggered after mass protests in 2011, forcing its long-serving president Ali Abdullah Saleh to step down. Let's now bring you up to date with news from sports arenas across the world in our Sports Beat. Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated shuttler PV Sindhu, who won the Macau Grand Prix Gold Open on Sunday. The two-time World Championship bronze medalist lifted her first title of the season by successfully defending it. She defeated Kim Hyo-min of Korea 21-12, 21-17 in the final that lasted 45 minutes. Her victory comes after India's triumph at the China Open, where Saina Nehwal, and K. Srikanth won the women's and men's titles. Brazilian Bruno Pelissari scored a winner in the 87th minute as the league leaders Chennai won 1-0 at the Jawaharlal Nehru International Stadium on Sunday. The Blasters remained fourth on 15 points momentarily, but could slip to as low as the 7th position if the bottom-ranked teams win their respective 12th round fixtures in the coming days. Well, the Indian cricket team trained at the nets on the Adelaide Oval on Sunday. The first test has been postponed after the death of Australian cricketer Philip Hughes. The Indian team coach Duncan Fletcher offered his condolences. Hughes will be buried in his hometown on Wednesday. Hillel Avaskaran, Indian origin international umpire, died after being hit in the neck by a ball during a league match in Tel Aviv. The incident comes just 2 days after tragic death of Australian player Phil Hughes. Avaskar was at the bowler's end and was hit when the ball ricocheted off the stumps and hit him in the neck from a shot that came straight back down the pitch. Former Indian national football team captain Baichung Bhutia was honoured with the AFC Hall of Fame award in Manila on Sunday. FIFA President Sepp Blatter presented the award to Baichung on the awards night. Moments after receiving it, Baichung said that the award was not solely for him but for Indian football. That's it on this edition of the Bulletin. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.